Hello everyone and welcome back to the Aftermath series. I hope you all had an absolutely wonderful holiday break, but without wasting any more time, let us dive right into this week's episode of Critical Role. So we begin the episode with the aftermath of the fighting pits, where the party once again has a small period of downtime where they can do whatever they want, and the party definitely wasted no time getting right back into their classic shenanigans. The party did, however, spend some time planning their talk with the Bright Queen when they ultimately do go to Xhorhas to discuss this peace talks. They were trying to figure out what they were going to say, what information they were going to give the Bright Queen, because we know that the Empire is willing to give up one of the beacons for a chance at peace. However, we are aware that there are 3 beacons, one of which was returned to the Bright Queen by the Mighty Nine. The second one, we know that Vesta Ragna and Ludinus Deleth were having Yeza experiment on, and then there's the third one that was recovered from Pride's Call. Now we know where 2 of them are, obviously. One of them is in the sanitarium, and one of them is with the Bright Queen. However, where is this mysterious third beacon? It's likely that the Empire is holding on to it and keeping it a secret so that they may further their experiments and research on such a device. But what the party is worried about is that this beacon that's still missing is one that we can assume the Bright Queen has seen or used before, and the one that the Empire is willing to give back is a brand new beacon that the Bright Queen may be able to see the difference in. But after this conversation about the Bright Queen, the party moved on to discussing Traveler Con and what all of that entails and what Jester's role is in all of that. Clay and Yasha decided that they might put on a performance with their new instruments, Caduceus's bone flute and Yasha's amazing, badass bone harp. But Jester did show a little bit of concern because she ultimately doesn't know what her job is going to be. She sees herself as the Traveler's #1 fan or follower, so she believes that she should have a more important role when Traveler Con comes around. However, when she tried to contact the Traveler to maybe clarify some of these questions she had, the Traveler did not respond, which left Jester rather heartbroken and worried about what was to come. But after all of these conversations were had, the gang decided to do a little bit of research. Bo decided to delve further into the archaeological digs of Wildmount to try to find if there were any other beacons that were uncovered, but she did not uncover anything in that regard. Jester decided to spend her research time delving into the mysteries of tarot card reading, but unfortunately, due to a poor roll, she wasn't able to uncover too much. But Taliesin did give her a little bit of information, specifically about the Moonweaver and their tarot card decks. And Jester quickly found out that Molly's deck of tarot cards were actually self-made, and he was working on finishing the deck with art of his own. So Jester just had a rather emotional moment, breaking down a little bit in the library as she was just looking at all of these cards that Molly made himself and how she may actually want to finish what Molly started and make his tarot deck complete. Caleb did a little bit of research of his own, going into the Age of Arcanum and trying to see if there were any mysterious falling stars or meteors that may have been beacons. But again, ultimately, he wasn't able to uncover anything in regards to these beacons. And then finally, Clay also decided to do a little bit of research, but he decided to learn a little bit more about the Traveler. And as we already did know, because Caleb did research of his own, the Traveler is a newfound cult, is what people are calling it. He's more of a legend or a fairy tale. There's still not a whole lot of information on the Traveler, which makes him a lot more sketchy than he already is. But I'm sure everything's gonna be fine. There's no way the Traveler's gonna be malicious, right? Moving on from the library, Ford decided to take a self-care day where he spent the better part of the day at a spa, freshening himself up, getting a new haircut, cleaning himself off, and this is definitely needed for Ford after his devastating fight with Darrow in the fighting pits. Not decided to do a little bit of shopping instead of research or the spa. She bought a few small blank cards for Jester so that she might make her own tarot deck eventually. A very nice gesture, and Not even offered to assist in creating art for this deck. And during Not's shopping, Bo had asked Not to buy her a few throwing stars, and so Not decided to have some throwing stars custom made for Beauregard. Not asked for these throwing stars to have "Pop Pop" inscribed onto these throwing stars. As we know, that is Bo's signature catchphrase when she goes for her punching. After all of the shopping and research was done, the party once again returned to the inn, where they had an evening of relative rest. Not actually decided to help Caleb further along Caleb's research into finishing Halas's spell. So they just had a nice cute moment where they were working together, trying to help Not find a solution to her goblin problem. As I mentioned before, Yasha also got her bone harp, where she then began to practice and figure out how it works. Now what's interesting is the way Matt described it is when she was playing it, it was just this ominous but beautiful sound, and the way she was playing it, it just came naturally for her. What makes this interesting is that in the previous episode, during Yasha's fight, she was punishing herself in a way. She wasn't fighting back. She was letting her opponent just absolutely wail on her. She felt that she needed that punishment for everything she's done, and she tried to use that as a therapy, but Yasha even said herself that that didn't really work out in her favor. But now she has this instrument that she's just acquired, so it'll be interesting to see if instead of violence as therapy, she now turns to music for therapy. I think this bone harp is actually a very nice character progression point for Yasha, and it'll be interesting to see if she's able to recover in a much more healthy manner. But then the next day comes and the party decides to spend a little bit of time going to the spa. Ford went the previous day, and now the party decided to, hey, what the heck, we've earned this, and we know that going to the Bright Queen is going to be rather stressful, so let's treat ourselves. And on the way to the spa, they actually met up with Darrow, who they then invited to join them to the spa. Nothing too terribly exciting happened during their spa visit. The only relatively interesting information we gained was that the Stubborn Stock, the group that Darrow runs with, is working for a client in Rexingtrum, a client who he's not going to reveal the identity of. After they finished their business with the spa, they didn't leave the spa to go back home and change out of the bathrobes and towels. Instead, they decided to teleport to Xhorhas straight from the spa, taking their bathrobes and towels with them. So we had a pretty funny moment as the party teleports to Xhorhas, and they travel through the Bright Queen's castle, so to speak, fully dressed in their bathrobes, which Ford thought was rather embarrassing, so Ford decided to change back into his regular clothes. But Caleb, being the trickster that he is, decided to cast Seeming on the party and Ford, making Ford look like he remained in his bathrobes while the rest of the party looked like they're in their regular clothes. Just a silly little prank on Caleb's part. Eventually, the party gets back to the Xhor house, where they contact Essek to let him know that they wish to see the Bright Queen and relay some information. Essek eventually meets the party at their house, where he explains that they discovered that a member on the Bright Queen's council was a member of the Angel of Irons and was also responsible for giving the beacons to the Empire. The name of this operative is Adine Tassithar. Now, I don't think we've met him before, but Essek makes it clear that he's being held prisoner, and he is likely going to be executed for his treasonous acts. But before that happened, the party wanted to see if they could get any more information from him. And so, Ford disguised himself as Vence and asked to be thrown into the same cell as Adine. And during Ford and Adine's conversation, it was quickly uncovered that Adine seemed to have been mind-controlled, just as Yasha and the Inevitable End were. So now comes the moral dilemma of, do we still punish Adine because he still did the acts, or do we show mercy because it wasn't really his will that was carrying out these acts of treason? After the conversation in the prison, the party finally decide to move on and have their meeting with the Bright Queen, where they discuss pretty much everything that's happened in the recent months. They explain that Adine was mind-controlled and that Oban was destroyed, and so Adine now has full control over himself again. Yasha explains to the Bright Queen that she was also under this mind control from Oban, and that now that she's free, she is seeking to redeem herself, and she feels that Adine should also be given this chance. The Bright Queen was swayed a little bit, but then one of the Bright Queen's military officials spoke out of turn and asked the Bright Queen herself to show mercy on Adine. Now, the Bright Queen didn't lash out at this military official, which raises a question: who is this military official to the Bright Queen, and who is she to Adine? My initial thoughts is perhaps this official is the sister to the Bright Queen, or maybe just a close friend, or perhaps there is a romance between this military official and Adine. Again, that's just pure speculation. It probably doesn't even matter at this point, but it just shows that the Bright Queen's decision was swayed because of this official. Then Caleb passionately brought up the peace talks and how he desperately wants an end to this war, but he wants it for the people. He wants the bloodshed to end. He wants to remove and cut out the cancer that is the Assembly. He explains that the Assembly is willing to give back the beacon, which everyone is super skeptical about, and there is most likely some ulterior motives that the Assembly has. But Caleb just reinforces the fact that we shouldn't care that the Assembly has ulterior motives. There are greater threats to be worried about. This war is just a distraction, and peace must be had, even if it means the Assembly gets the upper hand in some way. The Queen was intrigued by all of this, but ultimately it was Caduceus who convinced the Bright Queen to agree to these peace talks. And honestly, I highly suggest rewatching that entire meeting with the Bright Queen, because it was just such an intense, powerful moment. This peace talks between the Empire and the Dynasty has been a goal, something the party has wanted for such a long time. The party desperately wants to see an end to all of the unnecessary violence that this war has caused. We get to see Caleb extremely passionate about ending this war, saving the people, removing the Cerberus Assembly from power. We got to see Clay convince the Bright Queen that when both parties fear something greater, they can come together for peace to take down this mutual threat. It was just such an awesome, powerful moment that I suggest everyone watches once again. However, the Bright Queen only agreed to these peace talks if a few terms were met. Obviously, she wants the beacon back, and she made it very clear that the ceasefire must be maintained up until the peace talks. If a single Kreen life is lost by the Empire's hand before the date of the peace talks, the ceasefire is off and the war resumes. And her last term was that she wishes that Vence and Adine are both present during the negotiations, because more information might be gleaned from both of them. After the meeting concluded, Matt described the Bright Queen sinking back into her chair in a more relaxed manner and with a warm smile on her face. And he specifically said that the last time we saw her this way was when she received the first beacon that Caleb gave her. So it's interesting that perhaps this means that she is hopeful and does desire an end to the conflict, or just might mean she's happy because she's going to get another beacon back. But with that intense meeting out of the way, we got to end the episode on a more wholesome note, where the party went back to their Jor house, where they had an evening filled with drinking, laughing, and watching and listening to Caduceus, Yasha, and Jester perform on their various instruments. And with all of that being said, we are going to wrap up. Let me know all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions during that episode. I definitely missed you guys. I missed doing these videos, making the highlight videos, so it's nice to get back into the swing of things. But I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic rest of your weekend, and I will see you all next week.